Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three black moms.
Today's program is pretty personal in a way because as I speak, our mother is transitioning into the next plane. And it's painful, it's sad, and yet it's a part of life. Death is a part of life. And we wanted to talk a little bit today about when we let or allow people to pass away, to pass on, and how we can make that as painless as possible. Because, of course, we're going to grieve. We're all grieving my mother's impending death, but she celebrated her 101st birthday this past May. She has lived long enough to see her youngest grandchild graduate high school and hear her graduate from college. She was 75 when her youngest grandchild was born, so that's quite a feat. She has had a remarkable life. Even though she was blind, she has three great grandchildren one who she is in contact with more often, two that came all the way from halfway around the world to see her for her 100th birthday. So, as our family's matriarch, she will be missed, but she leaves an incredible legacy. And we need to talk today about how that legacy can be carried forth and when to let that person take their final rest. Now, my mother isn't in hospice. She's being lovingly cared for by my sister Naima. Um, she has been lovingly cared for this weekend by my daughter. She has had my older sister come and visit her. She has had her oldest grandchild come in all the way from China to say her final farewells and to be with her. And so we're hoping for a peaceful ending. But when we talk about loved ones, we also, not just parents, but other loved ones in our family. Sometimes it's children, which is always tragic. Sometimes it's siblings. And sometimes, as I found out just a couple of weeks ago, it's a beloved pet. And you have to know when it's time to let them go. Because when your loved one is suffering, when they're no longer who they were, when their quality of life has suffered, um, how long do you hang on? And is it selfish for you to hook them up to machines or pump them full of lots of fluids and painkillers and medicines that can keep the body alive for a long time? Or do you let nature take its course? And how do you know when the time is right? Sisters, how are we feeling today? Is this the time for us to come together because my mother isn't in hospice. So we're going to let God take her when God is ready.
I think it can be very sad because she's our mother. And I think that the grieving process is normal. One thing that does give me comfort is that Mama knows the Lord. It doesn't make it any less painful to know that she's going to be with the Lord when she passes, because there is that separation that we're going to experience. It'll be our loss, heaven's gain. And as believers, we don't grieve the way that the world grieves, because we do have that eternal hope in Jesus Christ, and knowing that she is going to be living forever and that she will be there when we arrive. I remember the first time that I had an encounter with death. I was 16, and one of my best friends had bone cancer. She died before our high school graduation. And it was hard because we all had our futures ahead of us, but obviously she did not. And there were other instances where death touched me deeply, but I'm reflecting on the time when my father passed away. It was a really tumultuous time. My children were young, and I remember the service, everything being made ready, and I was not able to explain how I was feeling, but I wasn't really feeling anything. And then one day I was at a thrift store 3 years later, and I saw this book on the shelf. It was about fishing, and I picked it up and said, "Oh, David, this book." Then suddenly I started just bawling there in the aisle in the store, as grief overtook me by surprise just with that statement. And I actually had to hide from my friends I was shopping with, because I was so overcome and overwhelmed and embarrassed and didn't know where that came from. I had kept it together, quote unquote, until that moment. And so sometimes that moment will hit you at an odd place, and it's okay to have it happen when it does. It's okay to have that sorrow because of your loss, even though there's that inner joy because you know where your loved one has gone. And I I think that sometimes we cannot process those feelings adequately. Um, I remember when my friend lost her child at a very young age, just turned 2. And I didn't know what to say. I really didn't say anything. All I could do was give her a hug and kind of cry into her neck. Um, my pastor who lost his mom, and his mom was relatively young, he would talk about her while he was at the pulpit, and he would start crying, and we all felt with him. It's a small congregation, so we all had that closeness, and we would say, "It's okay, pastor, it's okay." And he says, "I promise I won't keep talking about my mom." um, but he did talk about her for about 2 years, but we never tired of him remembering things about her that touched him. He had been an only child. And so the loss was really great because he wasn't able to share it with any siblings. I think that when we approach death, you have to be willing to allow people to grieve in their own way, to handle it or not handle it. When my husband was a chaplain at a hospital during his internship, there were many people who came in who had lost a loved one, and he had to come in and be with them, pray with them. And there was one woman who came in when her husband had passed away, and she wanted to do Reiki over the body. And because that was a comfort to her, my husband was fine with her letting her go through that procedure. I think we have to be very compassionate and open to people who may not share the same belief system, but we're all going to go through grief at some point in our lives. And we have to be willing to allow a person to entertain whatever is going to help them through the hardest moments in their lives. Naima?
Well, as you know, I've been through this process several times, and it has really helped me tremendously to understand and to help other people who are going through the process of letting go of a loved one. Started out with our father, and I was here. I think both of you all, of course, were, I'm sure you were in Boston, and Barbara, you were on the other side of town. And, you know, he was at that stage where he was going back and forth to the hospital, and we knew the time was soon. And the last thing he said the week before the last time he went to the hospital, he said, I want to show you all these things. So we sat down, he went over all of his paperwork, all of his insurances, and all the documents and everything, so that when the time came for his transition, things could be handled smoothly. You're not searching through drawers trying to find insurance policies and trying to get bank accounts together. I mean, he made sure he was organized. He had everything in one big thick notebook. He was very organized, which is something that you have to do so that your loved ones aren't distressed at the time of your passing. Get your affairs in order ahead of time, because somebody's got to go through that stuff. So he made it very easy. And then the next one after that was my husband, and he had an illness which, once he was diagnosed with colon cancer, they gave him maybe 6 months. Well, he ended up staying a year and some, maybe a year and a half. So never let doctors tell you when your time is up. Your
Right.
soul knows when it's time for you to go. Your soul has already determined what your exit point is going to be. And sometimes you might change your mind based on situations changing, because life really is not accidental. It is very much planned. And so he ended up, of course, staying around a while, but the last weekend of his life, he was losing the capacity to speak. So the last thing we did together was plan his funeral. And we had the whole program planned out, the pictures he wanted, the order of events, the people who were going to speak, everything. So it was done while he was still here, which made it much easier for me to handle things, because, it's traumatic losing a life partner. And to have to go through that and handle it meant I had to be of calm mind. I couldn't be falling apart. Who's going to handle it if I didn't? So I had to handle it, and things went smoothly and everything. And then the next person, of course, my mother-in-law, she was dealing with Alzheimer's. And it was really hard for her children, her two remaining sons, my brother-in-laws. It was hard for them. And a lot of times I would step in when I see there was stress going on, because I could be a little more detached and kind of help her through that process when she, would be going through the phases of forgetting things or not quite be in this state of reality. But we went through that, and of course, he said, "Well, I want you to know where my insurance papers are. I know my sons aren't ready to talk about it." And a lot of times, that's the thing. People aren't ready to talk about it, but you need to talk about it before they get to the point where they can't remember. If they go through dementia or anything like that, you need to talk before anything happens, or whatever might happen at the end times, so that your children who have to handle it aren't distressed. Her situation was, easy. And I had a dear friend who she had a sudden stroke, and we all went to the hospital to be around her last moments. And it was like 5 of us around her bed. We were praying and everything, and we told her, it's okay if you're ready to transition, because she'd gone into a coma, and the doctors said she hasn't been awake for the last 48 hours. And we said to her, it's okay if you need to leave. We're here to support you, whatever decision you make, either to stay or go. And of course, she chose to go. And that was kind of challenging, because her family wasn't present. Her immediate son was not present in this state, so we planned her memorial and so forth. I didn't realize that I was grieving until later. A couple of friends asked me, well, how are you feeling? Because they knew we were close. And then that's when I realized I got these tears inside that I haven't cried.
Yes.
Could also be organizing, And so now with our mother, it has really given me an opportunity to build our relationship in a loving way. And this is what I want to say that I discovered about that. A lot of times people think, oh, I don't want to be a burden, and we've even known some famous people that ended their life because they knew they had a terminal illness. They didn't want to go through their family having to care for them as an invalid. Let me tell you something. When you allow yourself to go through that process of your body shutting down, however it may be, through disease or aging or whatever, you give an opportunity for people to express love to you in a way that they may not have been able to do when you were in good health. And it's a growing process for them. So don't rob your family of that process of love, of being able to care for you in ways that are major, washing you, changing you, bringing your food, all these things to show love, because this helps them even in the process of healing from the grief, knowing that they did care for you, and knowing that they showed you that they cared, knowing that they said the things, I love you, I really appreciate all you've done for me. All of our mothers, children, and grandchildren have had a chance to say that and do that as she's going through this slow process of, it is slow, and you can't rush it. You can't say, when is it going to happen? It's going to happen.
What's hard for me is the fact that how much Mama perks up when she hears from my son, when he calls her from Australia, and she smiles. My best friend from college, Beverly, came by. She had put her mother to rest just a few months ago. Her mother was 95. And my mother remembered Beverly. And she smiled when Beverly touched her and kissed her and gave her a little hug and said, I love you, Mrs. Charles. And then, of course, I have both of my daughters who are here. One is already here in Chicago, and the other one, of course, came from China to have some special alone time with grandma before she goes to be with the Lord. And I feel a sadness because she is shutting down, but then she perks right up when she has that interaction with one of the children or grandchildren or great grandchildren, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, not yet. And it is hard to watch the process. I have not had to intensely be involved in the process. When my mother-in-law passed away, she hung up. We were at a festival 3 hours away, and she was in the hospital. Her cancer had come back with a vengeance because she had gotten all of her affairs in order. She had made things right with people who had been mad at her. She had written letters. I mean, this woman got her stuff together. And then when the cancer came back, she was like gone within weeks. But we were at the festival. She was the last hour, of course, she held on until Eric, her oldest son, got there. And you can't believe how many delays and things that happened that almost kept us from getting there. But after Eric arrived, it was like this sigh of relief that he got there, and then she passed away. And then the same thing, when you're reading the story of Jacob, when he finds out that his son Joseph isn't dead, that man roused himself up from his deathbed and traveled all the way there to Egypt to see his son. And he didn't fly there on a plane. Uh, he
Travel took
had
a
a
little while
long
back then.
trip to get himself ready, but he roused himself up until he was able to see his son that he had thought had been dead all those years. And then he felt comfortable enough to let go. And the hard part, of course, is us. We are left here. They have passed on. They have made that decision that, yes, now I can go.
And it's important for us to realize that it is a decision. Life is a decision. No one is here by accident. And I am so grateful that the experiences that I've had have allowed me to learn some things about life that just makes the process of letting go so much easier and peaceful. Now, my husband and I, we had an agreement that, regardless of our faith and our studies and our scripture reading, of course, we were devoutly part of a global Muslim community. But I told him, when you get to the other side, I want you to figure out a way to come back and tell me what the real deal is on the other side. I don't want a faith. I want to know. And it was only a couple of days after the and he started to visit me. And we had visitations. This was something beyond just dreams. At first, it was like,
But dreams are visitations too.
I mean, and dreams of visitations and actual visitations, and then experiencing out of body, entering another dimension of existence where my soul and body separated, and we were able to come together in a space and time that exists in the spirit realm. And each time this happened, I had a blank pad next to my bed. I would write down what happened. I'd write down the time that I came out of it and exactly what was said and everything. And over a period of a year, this was going on. And there was a point where he was able to actually help lift my soul out of my body and enter the dimension where he now resides. And we had conversations. I went to a place, the apartment is. I went to a party they were having at a reception. I mean, I went to a college campus where he's taking classes. This was amazing. And for me to have experienced that was so profound. And of course, my husband and I, we'd written books together. This was like our fourth book that we wrote together. And the name of it now, it is published, called Visits from the Dream State. And I often give that as a gift to people who have lost a loved one and are grieving heavily. That experience led me to do a lot more research, and I discovered so many things. And now I watch a lot of videos with near-death experiences. There are videos all over YouTube. I mean, there are so many people, because of our modern technology, when you restart somebody's heart, all kinds of things that happen that usually before in the past you'd have been declared dead. Now you actually come back literally from the dead. But there are so many people who have come back from the other side and explain how beautiful it is. And so Tom's grandmother, she had that experience. She had died, flatline. They brought her back with the the heart starter.
Paddles, yeah.
Yes. And she said to him, she said, come into the room. She said, I want everybody to leave. I want you to come in. She had him come in there because they were very close. His grandmother raised him. She said, look, you tell those people Don't bring me back anymore. I've been to the other side. It is beautiful over there. Let me go. And he was just so moved. I mean, he was crying when he came out of the room, but he said, Grandma is happy. She's full of joy. She said, let her go. And so I know that this is real because people are saying when they've come back, even when might try to explain to the hospital nurses or doctors, and sometimes the doctors say, oh, you were hallucinating. Oh, well, it's the anesthesia. They say, no, I've been there. I talked to my relatives over there. I talked to my religious figures over there.
That's very common because
it was beautiful. I mean,
because people have said, oh, like when they're passing on somebody and they say, like here, they'll say, oh, they were just talking ragtime. But they're talking to the people who are waiting for them.
Waiting for them.
They're not talking ragtime to somebody who's still on this plane. They're talking to their siblings or something, and their spouses, and they're talking to them because they're seeing them, because they're being welcomed.
They're there. It's
even if you are not a person of faith, or you have skepticism about all this, if it doesn't hurt you to believe there's something better. The worst thing that could happen is that you get there and there's nothing. But if there's something beautiful, and you have that optimism, and you don't have that fear of death, and when there are, and we're always going to fear some part of death, because this is all that we know in this life. But this is also part of that circle of life. And knowing that if you have a belief that there is something beyond what we can see, touch, feel, hear, that helps us. That will help us as we watch our mother. I mean, we're all, except for you, technically senior citizens. So we're senior citizens who are watching our parent, and we're becoming orphans, after being, practically, ready to get Social Security ourselves. So it's different for us. I've also had friends who've lost their parents young, and that's very hard. For us, it's hard in a way, and yet it isn't. It gives us all that sense of mortality, which we all have, but it also gives us a chance to grieve and to celebrate the life, that we have had, that she has had, the people that she has been able to see grow and change and thrive. When Daddy died, Zakia was 10 years old, and
Yeah.
that was her best friend, and that was hard for her. Now she's a young woman who is traveling the world, and yet she's still very close to her grandmother. So,
Yeah.
this is something, that's a gift that Mama has been able to give us, is just by being here.
Absolutely.
One of the things that stood out to me, and I know that people have always joked about this particular artist's dramatic expressions, but Jack Chick had a track out where he showed people around the bed of a grandmother who had passed away. Everyone was crying and bawling, but in the background was an angel who had reached down and was taking the hand of the mother, and she had become a beautiful young woman that she was in her youth, and the angel was lifting her up into heaven, and no one else saw this. And this was an expression that Jack Chick had shown in one of his comic tracks. And I think on another plane, we should recognize that some people's grieving is to immerse themselves in work. I remember being a little surprised when my husband's mother had passed away, and he went right into being busy getting a lot of assignments completed and carrying on with a lot of things that he had allowed to pile up. Um, but I recognize that sometimes men grieve very differently from women. They will lose themselves in work and busyness. My husband was very calm and saying, well, I know where my mom went. My mother knew Jesus, she knew the Lord. And I know that of all things, Christ's resurrection is what stains us. He died on the cross to cover our sins. He rose again from the dead to show us that by simply believing in the one whom he has sent, we have made ourselves available to be able to understand that the hereafter is nothing to be afraid of. It is life giving, it is nourishing, and it is restful. As I said earlier, believers do not grieve the way the world grieves because we know that we have eternal life, because we believe in the one whom God has sent. He who believes in life has everlasting life. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he dies, yet he shall live. That's a promise I hold on to. That is a promise that I know I can hold on to for my mother.
Well, on that
So,
note, I
well, I think that one of the things that this experience has done, and that is to give us an opportunity to really explore what happens when people are perhaps afraid of death. And really, I want to take this opportunity to share what I learned with so many people who have given their testimony, who have passed away and either been resurrected on an operating table or suddenly appeared on the table in the operating room, or just been declared dead. And one guy, he actually was in the body bag. But there are a lot of people in the hospitals who are afraid to die because they're afraid of hell. They're afraid of going to hell because they have been taught that they're going to hell if they are not a certain faith or they're not a certain belief. And unfortunately, because of that, they're in distress their last days. And that's a disservice for people who really need to be able to let go and be at peace. And I believe this is why, in this modern time, with our technology and our communication systems, we have been able to get the stories of people who have died and returned so that they could dispel a lot of myths. And I think it's important because we're all going to leave here.
yes,
But
none
if
of us are getting
we're
out of here alive.
absolutely, I mean, we came from the eternal and we return to the eternal. And so many people, and I'm going to suggest that you look up just simply near death experiences, NDE. Just look it up online. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonies. There were years, maybe back a few decades ago, before the internet, before the book by Raymond Moody and Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote the book Life After Life.
Yep, I read it.
There were so many people, and there were so many people who had these experiences, but they couldn't talk about it because people wouldn't allow them to tell what they had experienced. And they would either dismiss it or tell them they were hallucinating or lying or whatever. So they just shut it down, didn't talk about it. But the more people talk about it, the more people discover it, and the more people are able to share their experience to remove the fear of death. And I know this is a controversy, but I'm going to pull it up because I believe it's important, because everybody is going to experience leaving here or taking care of a loved one that may be terminally, of a life is a terminal illness. So you leave here because, like you say, you don't get out of here alive. But I think it's important to give power to those who often were told by Jesus and many others that met them on the other side, go back and tell your story. Go back and teach what you know so that you can remove the fear of death. So you can let people know that life is an eternal experience for everybody. And I'm going to say this so that everybody who wonders can know. It doesn't matter what your faith is. It doesn't matter if you don't have a faith. It doesn't matter what you think is going to happen. It doesn't matter if you fear what happens. You were with God before you came here. And you chose to come here for this experience to learn how to love. And earth is a place where you learn about love by experiencing its contrast, non-love. And the goal of this earth experience is to learn how to love regardless of what your circumstances may be, what body you're born into, what culture you're born into, what happened to you, whether you had parents who were loving and kind or parents who were abusive. All of these things you choose before you come here. And this is what I learned, not only from reading and hearing those experiences, but my own experience with my husband, who I have been able to visit in his dimension at will. And I didn't have a near-death experience. I left my body and went to where he's at. And I was guided to all of these various people who are teaching knowledge that will help us evolve so that we're, number one, not treating each other as if some people's life matters and other people's don't, or treating each other like, well, you don't follow my faith, so God don't like you, you're going to hell. All of that's wrong. And there's so many people who have come back to testify so that we as a human species can evolve to a higher level of consciousness and stop denigrating people who are different than us. So all of us have had many, many lives. And I know a lot of religions don't teach this, but everybody who died and come back and said, no, you've had many lives. Because the reason for that is so that you can learn things from other perspectives. You might be Asian in this life. You might be African in this life. You might be European in this life. You might be male in this life. You might be female in this life. All kinds of things so that you as a person can learn and you can evolve. And another comforting thing, all life is a soul. All life is a sentient being. So you're going to go and see the pets that you love. You're going to see the animal friends that were your faithful companions. They're going to greet you when you go to the other side. All life is valuable. All life is an expression of the divine. There is no hierarchy in the universe. And a lot of people have a hard time believing that because they want there to be a hierarchy. They want to be, well, we're better than everybody else. And God loves us. He'll, what was that line in the movie? God bless America and nobody else. And that and the movie was Head of State. Well, that's kind of how we have been brainwashed to think, God loves us and nobody else. And that's wrong. God loves everybody and everything, and everybody's going to see God. I don't care what your faith is or isn't, because that's our home. This is not our home. This is our temporary experience. And we will go back and we will experience the love of God when we leave here. And everybody will experience it. And the hell that people fear, the only hell that you experience is the hell that you created, because you will then, and this is how it goes. You look up near-death experience. When you leave here, you get a movie of your life. And they say to you, well, okay, how do you think you did? Because you went there, before you came here, they planned your life. You planned your life. They helped you plan it. All the things you wanted to experience in order for you to learn how to love. And then when you leave this world, you go back and they ask you, you sit down with your counselor, advisors, and they say, well, how do you think you did? And then they show you the movie of your life, and you experience everything that you did, how you made people feel about things you said, the actions you took, and anything that was hurtful. You felt the hurt that you gave someone else. And you can imagine somebody who was cruel or mean or tortured people or anything, how they would have to experience that. Now that's hellish when you feel what you did to people. But
the people who are surrounding you, they're not judging you. They're letting you judge yourself. And when you do, you say, oh, that's terrible. I wish I had not done that. I need to fix that. And that's what makes people decide to maybe go back to another life experience, maybe experience things from that person's point of view, so that they can learn compassion and empathy and love. That's the purpose of this life. And because there's so many thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world who are giving their testimony, we have an opportunity to evolve to a higher level of understanding about life and death, so we don't fear death, and we're responsible for how we treat each other in life. Because all these things that Jesus taught, he taught all these things so that people can understand that you are an expression, you are made in the expression of God. You are made in the loving energy of God. That's who you are. But you got to learn how to be that by treating each other that way. Now, all the things he taught, there's no contradiction in it, but there's misunderstanding because people want to feel like God is mean because they're mean, because they're unforgiving, they're unloving. So they can't conceive of a God who does not judge or condemn, but is sending you forth to learn so that you can learn how to love. It's so simple. And having experienced that, one of the things that drives me is knowing it's my responsibility to create platforms to allow knowledge to be shared and taught so that we as a human family can evolve out of this meanness and hatefulness and belief that God is mean and hates some people and curse some people and is going to send some people to eternal hell. There's no eternal hell. There is eternal learning and growth and evolution. And I love that understanding because not only does it make sense, it helps you respect everybody and everything on this planet because all of it is an expression of God. And I know that may not be everybody's faith belief, but trust me, whether you believe or disbelieve, we're going to all get there to the other side and you'll find out. So,
Well, I so agree with you that everyone is going to see God. Every knee shall bow and every tongue
you saw God
confess
before you left,
that
you're going to
Jesus
see
Christ is
God when you
Lord. That's everybody in the whole world. And I feel like you saw that Chick track where everybody sees a movie of themselves and finds out all these things they did. There's this one scene where a guy's going, let me tell you this dirty joke. Oh no, don't show that scene where I told the dirty joke. I think that even though Jack Chick was pretty dramatic in a lot of his comics, that sometimes he put across that very idea that your life is going to be shown to you, how you lived it, how you behaved, how you have not been right with yourself or with other people, and you have an opportunity to make those things right while you are here. Even the thief on the cross, next to Jesus, Jesus said to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." When the thief said, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Now, this thief on the cross did not have time to get baptized. He didn't have time to go door to door and tell people the good news. He didn't have like these great clothes. He didn't go to coffee houses. He didn't have the opportunity to do all the things that we set store by to make you right with God. All he did was just believe. And even at my 50-year high school reunion, when they asked me to speak over the death of our loved ones that had passed on, I shared the story of Lazarus and how Jesus brought him back to life after 4 days in the tomb by saying, "Lazarus, come forth." And everyone was just overwhelmed that this thing had actually happened, that Christ had the power over life and death. And it was just an incredible occurrence that changed the lives of so many people. And Jesus told them, "I am the resurrection and the life." Do you believe this?
Well, you know what's interesting? If you go to near-death experiences, there's this one guy, he had an interesting experience. He was dead for maybe a couple of hours. And, generally, I mean, if you're dead, you're dead. But during the time his body was dead, he was having wonderful, amazing experiences on the other side. And they showed him all about what happens when you leave. And He had a chance to spend time with his relatives. He had time to go to other planets and other galaxies, and he had a chance to observe some of his other life experiences. And he was going through all of these great things, and then he came back and, came back alive. And of course, it was considered a medical miracle, because like, how is this possible? But I think there was a nurse that came into the room, and they saw that the body bag that he was in was moving, and she discovered that he was alive. And there are things that Jesus did, and he would always say, "This and greater things will you do." So in today's modern times, we are seeing people being brought back to life after being declared dead. Just as Jesus said, he was showing the power that we are going to experience ourselves. And one of the most powerful things, and I also recommend one of my favorite YouTube channels, Next Level Soul. Alex Ferrari is the host. He has such wonderful people on that give their testimony. And one of the wonderful things that they say, some of them who weren't Christians, they go to the other side, they meet Jesus and everything. Some of them who of other faiths, they meet other faith leaders. But everybody says that all of us are going to reach that level of spiritual enlightenment that Jesus demonstrated, whether it was Buddha demonstrating it or any other faith leader. There are many Muslims around the world that they have also had near-death experiences, and everybody has the same welcoming, loving embrace by their family, their loved ones, their friends, their pets, people who've crossed over, and all of them come back and say, there's nothing over there but love. No condemnation, no judgment, no hellfire where you're condemned forever. It is only love. And they all come back transformed, and nobody comes back dogmatic. That's only on this side where we have limited understanding. No one who's had a near-death experience comes back dogmatic, no matter what faith they were before. None of them, and they might still be a faith, but it's a stronger, deeper understanding of the teachings that they received. Knowing that all of us are brothers and sisters. We are all one. God loves us all. We're all expressions of God. There is no hell, because all of us are here on a learning expedition to learn how to love. And in that life review, what you do feel is whatever hurt you caused as a soul in your ignorance of someone else. And what you feel is the regret that you didn't know better. And you want to experience an opportunity to make it right. That's what everyone says they had. And what I learned from that is to be non-judgmental of anybody who's different, to see the good in everyone, to see the God in everyone, and to live a life of service so that when I leave here, I don't have any regrets over what I did to people. I want to live as if I'm having that life review every day, so that I never have to feel bad that I hurt somebody. And for me, that was great growth. And I'm grateful that my husband transitioned ahead of time and kind of opened a door for me to go through and see that life is eternal. When I give the book that I've written, Visits from the Dream State, I always put an inscription there. I hope this confirms your faith, that life is eternal and love never dies. And that's how I live my life. And that's how I hope to inspire other people. And I think all of us, regardless of our faith, if we can just learn that everybody's experience is valid because it's for them, for their evolution and their growth, and all of us are going to go back to God, then I think we'll treat each other better.
With that said, I am inspired, and a lot of people have been inspired by the former Miss New York. Her name is Taryn Delaney Smith, and she actually just got married this past week. But she does a character on TikTok and Instagram, and she plays Denise, this heavenly receptionist. And if you get a chance to, her first name is spelled Taryn, Delaney Smith, Google her, and go on TikTok or go on Instagram and find Denise, who is the is the receptionist, and she has done as a comedian, she has kind of done these skits, these short little skits, but they're so inspiring that people have actually written her letters asking her to welcome, like, their friend or their dog or whomever. And she does these things, and she will have you crying over this whole thing about love. And it's just a wonderful way of imagining somebody, going to heaven and asking for someone. And she has characters that she plays in this, but it's a different way of looking at it. If you enjoy just the fact that this woman, and she's beautiful anyway, but she's she created this character that people have really connected with, on that sense of wonderment and love, and talking to a child that has passed on. And so there are things like that that maybe aren't real, but they are inspirational. And you can take inspiration from people who have wonderful things, and talking about the dogs that and the pets that go over the rainbow bridge, like when I told my dog to run over the rainbow bridge because she hadn't been able to walk very well, and I whispered to her right before she passed was, go ahead, it's okay, you can run now, you can run over
Yeah.
the rainbow bridge. And
Yeah.
I lost fear again.
Yeah.
So um, I wanted to end on that kind of note, that if you're looking for joy, because even though we're going to be sad when mama passes on, we can look forward to the joy that she will be able to walk and see our father and see her siblings and see our Aunt Powell, who was her sister, who was the one person who could really make her laugh,
Yeah.
and the people in her life and her own mother. So we have to remember, during our time of grieving and the time when we're saying, okay, mama, it's okay to let go, we're all okay, that there is going to be joy. And we
Yeah.
have to remember, like they say, joy comes in the morning.
Joy comes in the morning. And
So,
that is a definite thing we want to remind people of, that there is joy. And sometimes we prolong a person being here with artificial means just because we can, and they really are ready to go. And we got to think, are we doing this for them, or are we doing this for us? And it's because we're fearing what's on the other side. It's because we're afraid, well, maybe they're not going to be accepted, or maybe they're not, maybe this is it and we'll never see them again, maybe this life is all there is. So we prolong it, and we cause them pain and have them hooked up to all kind of machines, artificially keeping their heart beating because of our lack of faith or belief or experience or whatever. And this is something that each family really needs to think about. When a loved one's ready to go, they will let you know. And that means let them go when it's time to go. Don't try to make them stay here because you don't have an understanding of eternal life and the fact that life is forever for all of us, regardless of our faith. All of us been here, and we will be here when we leave this body. And you don't have to keep a person's heart pumping artificially because you think you'll never see them again. You will. And if you have a dream about them, that is their spirit contacting you, because when we sleep, that's when our bodies rest, while our spirit soars, our spirit travels, our spirits are able to meet with others in the spirit realm. So we have this eternal spirit harboring this temporary, or inside this temporary body, but we are the spirit, we're not the body. So let the body go, let it go when it's ready to be laid down. And one thing that I found really comforting, even for people who might have had a miscarriage or a stillbirth, a soul chooses you as a parent. It's not there's no accidental birth. Every birth is planned by the soul who chooses what parents are going to be those parents for that experience. But there are times that a soul might feel like they're not ready, and so they change their mind. And that's what a miscarriage is. That's what a stillbirth is. When they say, I'm not ready for this experience yet, and they change their mind and they go back to God until they're ready. And they might come through that same mother again, or they might wait and come through somebody else, but that is a choice that they're making. And I think, and I know it's about time for us to go in a minute.
Yes, it is.
But I think for those who have had children who either passed away early, also understand that death is not accidental. Your soul makes an exit plan when you leave here. And sometimes the experience you wanted to have, it only took 2 years for to be had. I mean, it only took 7 years, only took 12 years, only took 21 years. And so that's when you chose to exit. So it's not God punishing you, or why did God take my child? You know, I never said, God, why did you take my husband? You didn't take my husband. My husband went back home. You know, he was just here for a minute, you know, for us to do the thing we did together. We were successful in doing the things we came here to do together. And it was time for him to go back home. So I didn't ever feel like my husband was taken from me, because I know he still exists. He still lives, and he's enjoying life. I've been to the party. I know it's over there. And I want everybody to know that there is a celebration when your loved one leaves. There is a welcome home party like you wouldn't believe. And that's how come a lot of times when they leave here, they got a smile on their face. Yes. So we want to thank you all for watching us today and sharing this sensitive time with us as we prepare for our mother's return home. And we'll certainly have a homegoing celebration for her, because we know that's where she is. She's going home to be with all those she loves, to be with our wonderful Creator who sent her forth for this experience, so that she could have the impact that she had on all of
our lives,
literally all over the world, because our children are all over the world. We're so grateful that she allowed us to come through her. And we want to remind you all to like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us every Sunday, 5 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern. And until that time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black moms. I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black moms.